Hi, my, na- my name is Sam Galen, and my presentation today will be about reducing human error in law enforcement investigations. Justice may be the goal of the American criminal justice system, but it is not always the reality. The wrongful conviction of a person for a crime he or she did not commit is a tragedy that impacts everyone. The wrongfully convicted, the victim and their families, as well as the officials involved. Furthermore, the offender remains at large, and the community may lose faith in the police and prosecutors, eroding the legitimacy of the criminal justice system. Equally tragic is in the case which a guilty suspect is acquitted after police blunders raise doubts about a defendant's guilt. Investigators must understand how and why mistakes happen in police investigations to assure that injustices do not occur. Much of the data collected and discussed in this paper is available because of work done by various innocence projects that work to exonerate the wrongfully convicted. These projects have improved our understanding of how errors are made in the criminal justice system. Prior to the availability of DNA testing in 1990, it was believed that wrongful convictions were not as commonplace as we now know they are. The data collected by the Innocence Project and the National Registry of Exonerations, a joint project of Northwestern University and the University of Michigan Law Schools, provides information to better understand why wrongful convictions happened and how future investigatory methods can be more accurate and reliable. The National Registry of Exonerations database contains more than 2,500 exonerations between the year 2011 and March of 2020. The data is summarized into 5 broad categories or factors. Note that a single case may include all 5 factors, so the sum of the percentages exceeds 100%. Perjury or false accusation is the most frequent factor and is present in 58% of the cases. Official misconduct is present in 54% of the cases. Mistaken witness identification, 29%. False or misleading forensic evidence, 24%. And false confessions, 12%. I will cover the following errors that occur in the investigative process as researched by Keith Finlay of the University of Wisconsin Law School and Kim Rossmo and Jocelyn Pollock of Texas State University's School of Criminal Justice. Official misconduct, tunnel vision, institutional pressures and policies, and as well as false or misleading forensic evidence. Official misconduct occurs when government officials significantly abuse their authority or the judicial process. This can occur when police officers threaten witnesses, police officers eliciting false confessions from suspects, or child welfare workers pressuring children to testify falsely. In 2018, 107 exonerations were originally convicted due to official misconduct. Official misconduct is a broad category, and many researchers that I studied included it within each of the following categories. Tunnel vision is a common human tendency. However, it can have a malicious effects on the criminal justice system. It occurs when an investigator focuses on a suspect early in the investigation. They will tend to filter evidence that will confirm a suspect and ignore or suppress evidence that may point to a different suspect. Imagine a case that begins with mistaken identification, which may lead to investigators eliciting a false confession or fabricating testimony to prove that mistaken identification was actually correct. Prosecutors judges, even defense attorneys, may focus on the conclusion and continue to filter evidence through that lens. The conviction of Adam Brazil in Grundy County, Tennessee, is a perfect example of how tunnel vision can contaminate the investigative process. In 2006, he was arrested and later convicted of the murder of Malcolm Burrows. He was arrested after witnesses identified a man with red hair driving a gold car. Even though he had a credible alibi in another town for the time of the murder, and investigators found no physical evidence to put Brazil at the crime scene, they were sure they had their man, all because Brazil had light red hair and drove a gold car. The witnesses picked him out of a photographic lineup of men of various ages, which is problematic because most did not resemble the witness's description of the perpetrator. Investigators ignored the presence of another man's fingerprints at the crime scene and never made Brazil's defense attorney aware of the existence of the fingerprints, which may have exonerated him and potentially convicted somebody else. The owner of those fingerprints was a red-haired man who drove a gold car, who was since deceased. Adam Brazil was released from prison after several appeals and assistance from a former deputy and a judge. He served 12 years in prison, but the man who committed the murder was never charged. Finley regards cognitive distortions as supporting tunnel vision. These normal human cognitive biases are why tunnel vision is so abundant in the criminal justice system. These include confirmation bias, belief perseverance, hindsight bias, and outcome bias. Rosma and Pollock found that confirmation bias was the leading cause of investigative failure. It is a natural human tendency that causes us to look for or interpret evidence in a manner that supports our existing hypothesis. People will try to find information to confirm their hypothesis and avoid information that disproves it. A fair investigation should weigh all the evidence, regardless of any initial theories. Belief perseverance, or persistence, is another natural human tendency that occurs when we become stuck to a belief. Investigators may question information that conflicts with their initial belief and interpret ambiguous information as supportive of their original belief, instead of disproving that belief. Adam Brazil's case was tainted by belief perseverance. After mistaken witness identification, investigators stuck to the opinion that he was their guy, minimizing the alibi witness and actually hiding one piece of physical evidence that pointed to a viable suspect. Hindsight bias is thinking about an actual outcome in hindsight and believing that it was inevitable or predictable from the beginning. Finley explains this phenomenon through the way of our minds form memories. Memories are not fully formed visions. Instead, memories come together from various sources and are constantly updated and replaced with new information. This updated information is then used to reconstruct relevant memories, making us believe that we knew the answer from the beginning. Outcome bias is a similar phenomenon to hindsight bias. People will project recent information into past memories, not realizing that the outcome evidence has influenced the perception of their past memory. Tunnel vision and cognitive biases are behind most failed investigations. Cognitive debiasing is possible, but it requires a two-pronged process. First, training. Research by Casey Morwedge at Boston University has shown that specialized training can help diminish the influence of cognitive biases. A single training session, such as playing a computer game, can produce reductions in 6 different cognitive biases. Second, an independent review of cases is also important because detectives may have difficulty rethinking their own cases. External peer reviewers are more likely to catch errors, as well as point them out. Rossmo and Pollock deconstructed 50 criminal investigative failures. Their research found that institutional pressures and policies are responsible for many of the failures. A lack of proper supervision and management was the most common organizational problem. Conflict between law enforcement and prosecutors also played a significant role in many failures, especially in high-profile crimes with major media coverage. An example of this is when pressure from a mayor or prosecutor can negatively influence an investigation. And the negative impact of institutional policies can be reduced by creating protocols ensuring that basic investigative steps are followed. Supervisors should control risky practices and monitor unfounded conclusions. And police leaders should establish professional and independent relationships with prosecutors. The National Registry of Exonerations found that 24% of wrongful convictions involved false or misleading forensic evidence, while Rossmo and Pollock found that 30% of the cases they examined included problems with forensics and/or experts. Like all humans, forensic practitioners can make mistakes, such as mixing up samples or contaminating specimens. Most dangerous to justice, however, is a rogue medical examiner or lab technician whose tampering may put innocent people behind bars and let the guilty remain on the street. Fred Zane, who worked on cases in West Virginia and Texas, spent much of his forensic career faking lab results and lying under oath. Prosecutors in these 2 states used Zane's expert opinions and never questioned the fact that he managed to produce evidence with a certainty that other lab technicians couldn't approach. Zane served as a forensic specialist to 20 other states, and it is possible that he lied at thousands of trials. One of the biggest problems with forensic science is there are no national standards for science or admissibility for forensic evidence. A famous example of this problem occurred in 2015 when the FBI formally acknowledged that nearly every examiner in an FBI forensic unit gave flawed testimony regarding microscopic hair analysis in almost every trial, which they testified over nearly 2 decades. In reality, there is no accepted research on how often hair analysis may appear different and the same. Hair and bite mark analysis is a subjective technique that has contributed to more than 25 DNA exonerations between the year 1989 and 2015. Improving forensic science would go a long way to lessen investigative failure. Some suggestions for improving forensic science from the Innocence Project include forensic disciplines should be validated by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. More funding is needed to establish or strengthen the science behind testing evidence to make it more objective. We need more rigorous national standards, and judges should be trained to ensure that future decisions in admissibility consider the validity of forensic tests. In conclusion, Understanding how and why mistakes happen in police investigations is imperative in order to assure that injustices do not occur. Data from exoneration programs can help researchers to study the causes of wrongful convictions and improve the reliability of future investigations. This information can help criminal justice systems convict the guilty and as well as protect the innocent. Thank you.